keVLOG Pro presents the Coxel C Smart 1 Pro. This is very interesting. So let's backtrack. Remember, I made a video several months ago about another version, the earlier version of this 2-in-1 apex locator endo motor. At the time, I kind of labeled it and highlighted the word affordable. The reason behind that highlight is a device like this in a more popular company sells in the thousands of dollars. Well, in that particular device, it was only a few $100s. At the time, I was very skeptical. I didn't know if a company that's less known, less expensive could truly come up with something that's functional, that works. After using it, that device, I can easily say that it worked really well. The handpiece worked everything that I know, and also the apex locator was very accurate. In addition to that, I was able to use both functions at the same time in a way that I wanted. It would rotate in a manner where I can see the apex location working, and it will stop at the very apex. So it's something that I've used before, it worked well. Sometimes I don't want to use both functions, and I would just use the apex locator separately from the handpiece, and that was very useful as well. And that was in several months to a year worth of use. Now, this Pro version is especially interesting because it kind of transformed from just a practical device into something that's practical, and it has the details to become a premium device at a still inexpensive cost. And that's really interesting to me. So let's talk about this upgrade. Now, let's emphasize this is a major upgrade. Just from the look of it, the build from the device to the cords to the handpiece feel a lot more premium than the last version. A big difference right off the bat from aesthetics and from the feel of the instruments. It just feels like it looks better and it could last even longer. Now, the very interesting thing that I didn't expect from this new Pro version is the amount of details. It's pretty incredible. So first off, the device is used with a large screen, color, and the resolution is very high. In a device like this, it's typically low color, the contrast isn't very good, it's not very bright, and it's just there enough for you to see. Now this, it really feels like I'm looking more like a smartphone than a device used in endodontics. So that's right off the bat. It's very clear, bright screen, colorful. The other thing that's a nice touch are these touch controls. This is not a touch screen, but the capacitive controls on the bottom replace typical physical buttons where you press. So just from your light finger touch, the electricity there will transmit into the buttons to transform into the directional use or functional use. So having a touch control is beneficial in that it's easier, clean, and longevity. And that's a big upgrade in the previous version because I found that I made a mistake of using cavi wipes, a popular disinfectant wipes on my first version. And in the end, the label on each button started to wear away and eventually lifted out. It was a plastic material. And I truly believe this capacitive touch control will avoid that and make it a lot easier and more durable. Now let's talk about the software. It is very snappy. When you touch the controls to move from one function to another or a screen to another, it is very quick. That's really rare these days in dental equipment because the higher end smartphones, for example, it takes a lot of research and development to be able to develop software for a good hardware. And to have this combination is truly rare. The amount of details also goes into being able to use different file systems. They're all pretty much customizable as far as endo motors out there, but this is easy for users because all the default settings for the major brands are there. If you use Brasseler Endo Sequence, you have a setting there. If you use Dentsply Pro Taper files, it has a setting there. If you use a TF file, it has a setting there. It's not a big thing, but for an everyday consumer and dentist that aren't as familiar with all the various files, it is very easy because you already have the manufacturer's recommended settings built in. You just have to look for your company, look for your file type, and then even the sub file type. With this software also comes with a variety of details. That's a key word in this video. With capable software, it can also install different languages. That's rare again in dental devices. It takes a lot of software inclusion to be able to add customizations such as languages. In this case, there are many languages in here that if you prefer using is available. The other fine detail with the software is the calibration. So with the heads of the handpieces, sometimes they're different, or if you switch them up, it could change. And the premium endo motors that want to give you the perfect torque goes through a calibration process. Same with the apex locators. There's checks that you can do with another adapter that you place in there to make sure it is working properly. Typically, a device will give you those functions to calibrate, but it just doesn't look as visually appealing. In this case, the visual check marks, the calibration reminds me a lot like the calibrations used for Apple laptops. Whenever you upgrade your software in your OS system, it gives you like some check marks. It did this in the installation, it checked for this, and that animation, it looks very similar in this coxal device as well. Small detail again, but that's part of the theme of the video, and it's meant to emphasize how much work and attention was made into this device, and it really surprises me. Let's talk about the visualization and the physical aspect of the apex locator. So there's two ways you can use the apex locator on its own. It comes in a separate wire, a separate plug-in that can use only for apex location. It works really well. It has a visualization that goes along with theme, colorful, it's quick and accurate. In the first version, it was accurate, but I found that there's a slight lag in the visualization as far as what level you are in the root canal system. This is very quick. You move small amounts with your file, it will reflect that on the software as well. And I think that takes some physical improvements as well. The other method of using the apex location, of course, is to use the dual function with the endo motor. It works really well. I found that the visuals and the audio feedback works in conjunction to where I am. It works similar to other 2-in-1 devices in that you have a torque limit and reverses, but in addition to that, you also have an apical limit that when you get to a certain working length, whether it's 0.5 or 1 millimeter away, it's up to you, you can change that. It will stop and reverse. So that's very helpful in preventing accidental over-instrumentation. So at this point, you kind of get the idea of the 2-in-1 apex locator motors, they work well. So I wasn't gonna delve into that for too long. So I'm gonna move on to the handpiece. The handpiece feels really good, as I mentioned earlier. And what's really interesting, and this goes along with the theme of the details again, is it comes with this attachment in this black part right here. You can take it off, remove it, you can replace it if you like. So the gold section is meant to touch the file. It gives better conduction to be able to use the dual function, endo motor plus the apex location when you have a file running. But in addition to that, and it kind of goes with the details of the software and the hardware of the device itself, is that there's a light. I thought that's really neat. I haven't seen that in other handpieces before. I didn't think it would be useful initially because we have microscopes that are really bright, reflecting off the mirror into the canals, but I find that there are occasions where if we're, for example, using a maxillary molar, we're trying to use a mirror, but sometimes that handpiece head blocks the light from the mirror into the access. And so having a light there is actually a benefit to be able to see exactly in the canals, especially in the early part of the coronal instrumentation. Same thing with mandibular molars. If you want to use direct vision, the handpiece might be blocking the light in a certain way, and with a built-in light like that, could be another way to visualize the canals. So if I have to nitpick for a couple of things, these are small, more nuances. The first is the sound of the head. It's a little bit on the louder side. It's not that much louder than the average handpiece, but it's something that could be a little bit quieter. At the same time, it is the micro size, which I like, because sometimes with the latch, for instance, it takes up more of the file, so you have less room for the stopper if you do choose to not use the 2-in-1 apex location function. So with a smaller head, you can see more, and it's easier for reference points at certain circumstances. Now the other thing is this black attachment. Earlier I said this was a benefit because it offers a light, but at the same time, you do need the gold part of this adapter to engage the file to be able to use the dual function. So because of that, if you do want to change files, you do kind of have to shortly disengage it and re-engage it onto a new file. It takes a few more seconds, it's not a big deal, but it's something, it'll be nice to have that ability built in to the heads like in some other company. So overall, as you can tell, I am really impressed. For a given price, you would expect a lot less. You would expect something that's functional and works really well, but I was really amazed by the amount of details that basically make this easily a premium device.